Hello everyone, welcome back to another Java video. In this question, we're looking at question 13, where we're trying to create this pattern of a trident. Trident is a fork with 3 tines, or what we call prongs. A simple picture of a trident can be made from asterisks and spaces like so, and our 3 inputs are going to be the following. The first is going to be t, the height of our tines. S is going to be the number of spaces in between the tines that we have. And then we're going to have H, the height of our handle, to create something like this based on this type of input. So let's get that handled first. We're going to go system.out.println, and we're going to just ask the user enter the specifications of the trident. All right, and then we're going to be getting those values of t, s, and h. So we're going to say int t is equal to integer.parse int sc.next line. That, and then we're going to copy that one over. Ooh, we're going to copy that one over. And we're going to get our values for s and h. Let's bring that over there. Bring this one over here. And bring that over here so that we have like a detailed documentation of our inputs. Okay, so our t is going to be the height of the tines, s is going to be the spacing between the tines, and h is going to be the height or the length of the handle. Alrighty, so when we do any pattern generation questions like this, when we're programming, we really want to look at like line by line, because system.out.println is going to do a horizontal line output, and you really want to think about, how do I generate this pattern? Okay, and we can see that, well, we're going to have an asterisk to start and end. Right, we're going to have an asterisk in the middle, and we're going to have some spaces in the middle in between those stars, but we know for sure our pattern is going to start with an asterisk. So I'm just going to say we are going to have this string, let's call it a tine, and it's going to have this asterisk to start off, and we're going to need to add these spaces, which is determined by our s variable, right? The number of spaces between the ties, the tine. So we're going to say for integer I is equal to 0, and while I is less than less than s, we're going to go I plus plus, and we're going to run this loop that many times. So we're going to say, hey tine, we're going to add a white space like that. So this adds a white space to our time. So after that is done, we have outputted the first star that we need to output, or we added the first star that we have to output, and the spaces that we need, and then we need to add in the middle star. So here we're going to add on another asterisk, semicolon, adds in the middle asterisk. And then we're going to repeat this again. We're going to say that, hey, for the same number of loops, we're going to add in the exact same white spaces for this portion right here. Okay. Right there. And then we're going to add in the final asterisk at the end to say that this is the final asterisk. All right. So we have this type of code written out. So let's see what that looks like. I can show you that. It's a system.out.println. Println, we can print out the time pattern. So if I were to say Java C Q13 Java to compile it, then run this code, we can say 4 3 2. We have something like this. Okay, we have 2 spaces in between our asterisks, so we have our first line ready. Right, and then this variable t, the very first input, is going to tell us the height, how tall is the prongs of our trident. Well, that is just outputting this system.out.println, executing that code by this many time, or t many inputs, which can be done by a for loop as well. So at this point, we can say print out the prongs. We can say for int I starts at 0, I is less than the value of t, while I goes up by 1 at every iteration. And then we're going to have that portion outputted. Okay, so if we were to recompile and run our code like that with 3, 2, 4, we have height of 3 with spaces, 2 spaces in between each of our prongs. So our trident is off to a really nice start. Now we need to prep the middle portion, the divider. So if we look at this right here, right, we're going to have number of asterisks equivalent to the number of characters we have in our prongs, right? So by this line. So we want to generate that length. Okay, so we can say that we have a string called middle for our middle section, and it's going to be empty because we're going to be adding asterisks onto it. We're going to say for integer I is equal to 0 and I is less than. Well, how do I get that number of characters in this line? We can say, well, that is just equivalent to our time variable that we created prior, and it's going to be less than the length, and we're going to be adding I plus plus. Because we're starting at 0, we're going to go just one less than the length. And then we're going to go middle plus equal. As this for loop loops over and over and over again, it allows us to add in that many asterisks to our middle variable. And then we can just output the middle like so. Output the middle. Right? So we have this section all done, our middle section all done. Let's save our code and look at this program being completed part by part. Okay, so if we were to do 3, 2, 4, now we have these 3 prongs with the height of 3, and then we have added our middle divider. Okay. We know that there are these many spaces, but because of the second input, we know that there are 2 spaces in between each prong, and we know that, well, that means that's the space, that's the occupied space right there. If I want to get to the middle, though, I would need to add in one more space, then add an asterisk, okay? So what I mean by that is that if we had this type of a trident, right, and we create that, we would need to know that, well, right here, that's taking up the spot where one single space is. Therefore, I don't want in the very front asterisk there taking up the space, but rather a space, and take another space and drop a asterisk there. So that's the pattern that we want to create. Okay, so that is determined by the following. We're going to say we're going to prep the handle. So we're going to create a string variable called the handle and set it to empty string. And then we're going to say for integer I is equal to 0 and I is less than s plus 1 because we want to add one more space than the s value that was inputted, so that we get all the necessary white spaces right before the middle, like the holder of the trident. So we're going to add in handle plus equal white space like that, adding a white space. Then after that handle has been, a white space has been added, we're going to add in a single asterisk there to act as the handle like there. Awesome. And now the amount of times we actually output this handle is going to be determined by this final input. How many, like at the height of the handle, right? So we're going to say for integer I is greater than 0, while I is less than the value of h and I plus plus. We don't have to include it because we're starting at I 0. And we're going to say system.out.println and the handle. Okay, so save our work, clear our code. If I were to execute this code now, we are going to go 3, 2, 4. Okay, so the very first section that we coded handled the prongs. And then based on that, what we coded right here, we were able to grab the entire length of it so that we can cover it with asterisks as our middle portion, which was done right here. And then this handle portion, we had to create that pattern first, like a single line first, and we just had to repeatedly output that line this many times, which was dependent on the very last input value that we've been given. So my tip for you is whenever you do a pattern creating question is that you try to dissect the pattern parts by parts by either creating a variable and creating a single line of that pattern and repeating that multiple times, and then move on to the next section. Okay, and that is my personal tip to you to best solve these type of problems. Anyways, thank you for watching and stay classy.